Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Kathy L. Murphy, the Pulpwood Queen, reporting live from my home, Murphy's Law, in East Texas. And now I have a very special guest with us today. This woman has so many accomplishments and has written 2 wonderful books and has a radio program on iHeartRadio that is phenomenal to me because she has millions and millions of viewers. So I would like to introduce to you Dr. Afshan Naheed Hashmi. And we met when she invited me to be on her iHeartRadio show. And I talked to her just a few minutes before we started. And she said she just found me in a Google. And I'm always amazed at with the technology of the world, how we can connect, because you're up in Maryland, isn't that? Do you want me to call you Dr. Hashmi or Afshan?
Afshan is fine.
Afshan, okay, all right. Well, let's hear a little bit about you and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, I was born in India and I was educated both in India and USA. And when I came here, I did a postdoctoral fellowship at Johns Hopkins. And I am PhD in biochemistry, as well as I have a categorical course in clinical chemistry from University of Maryland and regulatory affairs from Johns Hopkins. But unfortunately, I couldn't get a faculty positions. And so then this was my hobby, writing. Always I was writing and reading, which I changed into a business now. And as you said, my radio show is on W4WN, the Women for Women Network, and it is the #1 internet radio channel in the world, and it is syndicated worldwide, and I have 300 million listeners. So and I have
Amazing. I mean, what you have accomplished as a woman and someone who has, you know, come from such a diverse background, and now you're here in the United States. And I understand you've been here since the 1990s.
Yes, 1992, when I got married, I came here.
Wow. And your husband, Mustafa, is that his name? Correct?
Yes.
I understand he's a big support for you too. He's like your first reader.
Yes, he is a very big support for me, because I believe, like, if your spouse is not cooperating, you cannot achieve anything, because there was a lot of daunting tasks. I was not making money in the business before, and so it is very hard, when you come from a very handsome paying job and then you land up and you are on your own, you cannot find a job. It is very hard.
Well, I am even more inspired because with all these, I was looking on your first book I read, the Modern Mughal Mentality, which is new strategies to succeed in India and the global marketplace. Well, this is all very fascinating to me because during the COVID pandemic, I'm a very social person, Afshan, and being alone in my little house in the woods in East Texas, I found I had some health issues and I was having a hard time reading at night. So I got lost in film, and I realized pretty quickly I'd seen everything that I possibly thought I could see, until I remembered that my daughters and I once watched this takeoff on Jane Austen's book, Pride and Prejudice, Bride and Prejudice, which was a Bollywood film. And I remember we enjoyed it so much. And I said, I need something that just to get me out of the doldrums. So I decided I would get online and look at foreign films. And I fell down the rabbit hole of films of India. And what I have found is that, even though we come from worlds apart, we all have the same basic needs. We all have so many similarities. And as women, we have to try even so much harder to succeed in the world today. And you're a great inspiration to me. I read the book. It's not a thick book, but it's very comprehensive. And it's one that I'll have to reread because there's a lot of information to take in and a lot of language that is unfamiliar to me. So tell me how this book came about, your first book. Is this your first one?
Yes, this was
Yes.
my first book, yes. And it was an Amazon bestseller and hot #1 new release on Amazon.
That's
And
awesome. Awesome. So,
so how this book came about is like I have devised a new business model in this Jugaad management principle business model, and Jugaad is like a Hindi word where which I have conceptualized as thinking outside the box, and common sense strategies which I have applied throughout my life, and that's why I am, because small tweaks if you make in your business, you will have profit, and it is in a case study form, and it is equivalent to a book from Harvard and Stanford. During those days, there was a lot of research going on in Harvard and Stanford about the word Hindi word jugaad. So I thought, this would be a very interesting facet to write about, and that's what I did. And I did it in a case study format, and in a very, like, usually the business books are very hard on your eyes, but this one is a very cool one. It gives you a soothing effect because it is kind of what you feel like it is kind of a story is unraveling one after another.
that's right. And I'm finding that that is one similarity we definitely have in common, because for me, people say, you think so outside the box, Kathy. And I said, what box? I go, I do not like to be labeled. I do not like to be put in any boxes. And I also love the fact that your first book was nonfiction, but your second book was fiction. And here in the United States, the publishers do not really want you to get outside of one genre. And I'm now working on a novel, and I've always written nonfiction. And in fact, as the director of acquisitions, one of my authors that I brought forward has written 4 fiction books. He was a New York Times bestseller for his nonfiction, but when he went to present that to with his agent in New York, nobody wanted them because they said, no, we want nonfiction books by you. And what made you write 2 totally different genres?
I can't hear you, Kathy. I can't hear you. It's totally lost the signal.
I mean,
Yeah,
oh no. Okay, let me see what's going on here.
yeah, now I can hear you.
I'm gonna sit a little bit more forward, but I've got the volume all the way up. But we're in worlds apart from each other, so uh, I know that sometimes this happens. Zoom hasn't caught up completely with us. But what my question was, what made you decide to write 2 different books that are outside, the thinking of one's fiction and one's nonfiction? And it's very unusual. And I always look for stories that are never been told before. So I'm curious about this.
Yeah, the second book is like, since I'm PhD in biochemistry and I always wanted a faculty position. So I couldn't get a faculty position. So I wanted to show to the world that I really know science. I really know viruses. I know bacteria and what harm they can cause to the world. And around you hear every day on TV about terrorism kind of stuff going around. So I devised in a very unique way. I wanted to show one to the world that I know science, and then I wanted to show how biological these bacterias and viruses, if they spread, how harm they can cause to the human population. And this book was released on February 2019, when there was no trace of coronavirus.
You are
And
ahead of your time, so ahead of your time. But, that's what's interesting to me. What you may not know about me was before, I've been to 7 universities and colleges myself. I just recently finished, I had to get my children through first, and I finished in 2017, but I was a geology major
okay.
too. I was a double major in geology and art, and people go, those seem worlds apart. They actually aren't. But what really hurt me, I could have used your help, Afshan, because the mathematics and the algebra and the chemistry formulas and things were very difficult for me. So I'm very impressed by anybody who understands the mathematics of chemistry and biochemistry and that's impressive, and good for you that you found a way to make it work for you, because it's really amazing how this is succeeding for you. And I love that you've got this in your fiction book, which is, everybody, it's The Outbreak of a Monstrous Infection. And what the byline is, it's a #1 Amazon bestseller. It's a #1 new release author, and it's a sizzling FBI and CBI, and I want you to explain that, mystery thriller science fiction novel. The CBI, I want you to explain to everybody, for people in the United States who don't know. We know what the FBI is, but what is CBI?
CBI is Central Bureau of Investigation, like a sister organization kind of FBI. In India, it is called CBI. And for CB, when this virus outbreak happened and who was spreading it, so CBI wanted FBI's help, because all around the world it happened in a wedding. And there were diplomats and all from around the world attending that wedding. Even the Prime Minister of India and the President of India was also attending the wedding. So it was kind of a international episode. Like, people were affected from many countries at the same time in that wedding. So CBI wanted FBI's help.
I knew what it was when I was reading your book, because I started out watching Bollywood, but now I'm watching everything. I mean, I've gone back to Mother India. I've gone back to some of the first films that were ever done in India. The storytelling is fascinating to me. And I've learned a lot about the politics, of course, and the religion. Just fascinating to me too, because there's like 500 or 600 different dialects in the country. And then there's also all these different religions, which causes, just like it does, I know when people look outside the United States, they tend to think of 3 states: New York, Texas, and California. But I come from a very small town or village, like you would say in India, that is in Kansas, mid-America. And this has just exploded my world of wanting to know more. So the more I read, the more I want to know. And the more I know, the more I want to share all these wonderful books with everybody. Your books came along when I had already picked out my 2021, but that's okay, because I'm working on the 2022. So I want to share these books, because when we come from these very small places in the world. Now, were you from a city in India?
Yes, I was like born in New Delhi, so I have kind of lived in New Delhi and Aligarh. It is 80 miles from a educational city. There is a very famous university, Aligarh Muslim University, from where I graduated. So I have kind of the city life, and I belong to a very illustrious family. So I know all the high-end people out there in India.
Fascinating. One of my professors she's working on a memoir, is from India. And I was just talking to her one day about how I discovered another actress from India. And she goes, "Oh yes, I went to high school with her." And I'm like, oh, I just kind of blew me away. Coming from a very small town of a county seat in Kansas, I had no idea this big wide world was out there. So it is my mission as the founder and CEO of the Pulpwood Queens and Timber Guys International Book Club, because we've been international for a long time. We've been throughout 15 countries in other parts of the world, mostly Americans who moved to those countries, who said, I'm going to start a chapter while I'm in England, or I'm going to start a chapter while I'm in Italy or Mexico or Canada. But now I'm finding that I put the international on there to really show that now all these people are joining from all over the world. And it's important to me to say, this is not just my agenda. This is connecting
Yes.
people like-minded, people who are thinking outside the box. We may not necessarily think about every thing exactly the same, but we have a conversation where we accept each other's differences and we celebrate our, things that we have in common. So it's a pleasure to meet you. And it was a thrill to be on your show. I mean, I love the music. Just listening to all the things in between the times we were talking, I got done and I couldn't sleep all night. I was going, I can't believe she has so many people watching this when I came from this very small town in Kansas. But it just goes to show you, whether you're in a big city or in, a small town of Eureka, Kansas, one person can make a difference. But if we all join hands and
Yes.
we come with this commonality that reading and education is important, to be a lifelong learner. And
Yes.
when something is fearful to you and you don't understand it, you need to embrace that. Because I've found every time something really scares me, when I face the fear, I have such a sense of accomplishment when I go, what was I so afraid of? I mean, the first time I went to New York City was as a book publisher's representative, and I was there for a month. Never been to the city before in my life. And now I'm representing 50 to 75 publishers, and I'm all over Manhattan. And everybody goes, everybody was so worried about me. And they go, are you scared? And I go, not at all. The people in New York were wonderful. Face your fears. And also, I met my first husband in college, and he was not from the United States. So I have a wide friendship base of people from all over the world. And
Yes.
there's many of them are still close and in touch now. So I found that, in fact, I kind of collect things from other places, especially the clothing. I have two real saris and I just love them. I almost wore one today, but you would have thought I was probably crazy. But I love costumes and clothes to celebrate. And I want to hear about your mother, because my mother, we had a college in my hometown that brought it was an all male college, started by a philanthropist up in Philadelphia called the Midwest Institute. And they brought in young men from all over the world, and the dormitory was across the street from me. So I got to know those boys from Venezuela and Japan and exotic places like Boston and New York. And they were just so kind to me and my sisters that I've always been fascinated with, other cultures and people. So what has been your experience? I want to hear about your family, first of all. You're very accomplished. So I want to hear about your parents. I mean, well, how big of an influence were they on you?
Oh, a very big influence. My maternal grandpa was like a freedom fighter, and he was best friends with Pandit Nehru. So, and they like, so I have met Mrs. Indira Gandhi many times, and I'm very impressed with her. Like, she is my, like, you can say, my heroine, or in
Sure.
the world, yes. And then my parents, my father was the one who discovered the precursor for Lipitor medicine from.
Wow.
Yes, so all those statins here from which these cholesterol lowering drugs are made, he was the one who discovered. But he did it in India in that small laboratory. He was here in University of South Francisco before my birth, and then he finished his PhD and he went back to train the next generation of scientists over there. And my mother also was in cancer research here in, and then she went back, and she was a fashionista in her own way. She was always very nicely dressed up and very well presented and very professional, and she was teaching in medical college biochemistry. So I'm a family of biochemists. And then my maternal grandpa was Professor Abdul Alim, his name was, and he was like, he changed during the independence era how the youth were thinking. He changed help youth during that time. So he was very famous. So
Wow.
that's all my background is.
Well, I was the first one in my family to graduate from college, except for my children. My children beat me, actually. Um, but I was the first one in my family. Both my parents went to college, but unfortunately, they both dropped out. My father almost finished, but my mother, he had married my mother, and they were on their third child. And he said it just got to be too much providing for the family. So I learned from a very early age how important education was, and it was always taught to me that you must go to college, you must get an education. And I am so impressed with how the country of India has really transformed itself in the past couple of decades from, this abject poverty. And, we see so many things, and it's still there. I mean, we have it everywhere in the world, but it's now becoming one of these technological countries that has, and it's because you really embrace education and show your children how important it is. And do you have children yourself, or?
No, I don't have any
No, you don't
children.
have any children, but your husband, is he also in the same line of work, or?
Oh, he's a respiratory therapist in a hospital.
Ah, well, that's great. I when I was growing up, women were, when they graduated from high school, my counselor said, "So are you getting married out of high school?" I go, "No, I do not want to get married." And he said, "So are you going to become a teacher or a nurse?" That was my choices, a teacher or a nurse. And I said, "Well, I faint at the sight of blood, so I don't think I'm going into the medical profession." And I had spent a semester teaching French to the grade school through our school program, had the seniors in French class go out to the, and I knew that I did not want to become a teacher. It was very hard. And the kids were very smart alecky. And I thought, how did people deal with that? I always wanted to be an artist, but that was not a choice. So I was enrolled in Kansas State University as an elementary ed teacher. And it was not what I wanted to do. So I secretly took art courses and design courses. And I then had two sisters starting after me. So my parents said, my mother said, "You're kind of on your own. You've got to finish up on your own." And I couldn't figure out how to do that, because all through high school and college, I lifeguarded, and I didn't really know of any professional lifeguards. That was years before Baywatch ever came out. And so I just thought, what am I going to do? And I had gone to a beauty school with a friend who gotten her hair cut, and I watched the person cut hair. And that was when the whole renaissance was happening with Vidal Sassoon, and everything was becoming, designer haircuts. And I said, it's an art form. So I worked 4 jobs that summer so I could work my way through beauty school. And that's what I've been doing my whole life, is doing hair. And I'd take courses, then I'd run out of money, and then I'd work some more and take courses. So I have so many hours and so many universities, because every time I move, you kind of have to start over. But my children, the minute they got out of school, they immediately went to college. And I'm very proud of both my daughters. They're very strong like you. And I have a grandson now too, and he's smart as a whip. But I think it's fascinating that you came to the United States. How scary was that?
Because since my parents were here, they had all those stories about United States, those good stories about. So I had kind of in my mind that one day I will go to US if God gives me a chance. And fortunately, I got married to a person who was in US, so I got a chance to come here.
Well, that's great. And were you always in Maryland, or you were other
Yes,
places?
always. I was in Baltimore before, like in Maryland, and then I came to, now I'm in Rockville, based in Maryland.
I went to Baltimore a couple of summers ago on a trip to deliver an art piece to the Jersey Shore. And they have the most fabulous museum there, that
Yes.
American. Oh my gosh, the woman who started it gave me a personal tour. And I have never been so inspired by all the art I saw there. You're in a wonderful part of the world, because I didn't know about that place, and it was just incredible. And so you're a city girl.
Yes.
Um, do you like to travel? Do you like to get out and see the world?
Yeah, but not really, not that much. Like, if I would rather go to a spa and de-stress myself and then come back and write, I think that is what who I am about. And I want to tell you, like, there is a platform called Tailflix. Have you heard about it?
What is it called?
Tail flicks, and they have written my script of this book, The Outbreak of a Monstrous Infection, and they are looking for if somebody can produce it. So I'll send you the link. If you can, if you or somebody has connections, and they can help me in that endeavor, The Outbreak of a Monstrous Infection, to be made into a movie or a TV series, because
You
you have a lot of Hollywood connections.
you need to connect. I sold my first book, The Pulpwood Queen's Tiara Wearing Book Sharing Guide to Life, to DreamWorks.
Okay.
Oh, which was, buckled me to my knees because, but what happened is they sold it. And then the producer that was involved with that, we've been through many ways of trying to renegotiate that. And the last conversation we had was going to Netflix for a series about my book club, because it started with 6 complete strangers in my beauty shop, and now we have thousands of members, and I would love to have millions like you do. But what I've found is that we life is about change, and it's changing really fast right now, and it usually does at the first 2 decades of a century. If you look back at the history of the world, and you look at, I read the Yuri Havari books, The Brief History of Humankind, which is on my reading list. And I actually learned about those books through Shah Rukh Khan, who had been reading them and talking about how wonderful these books were. And I did not know all this stuff about the world. But what I've learned is that life is about change, and that if you want to succeed, you have to learn to adapt.
Yes.
And so I have spent every night, I'm on YouTube, I'm listening to TED Talks, I'm listening to World Economic Forum talks, I'm listening to visionaries around the world, not just in the United States. And I'm finding the thing that people most have in common that are successful and that grow their business, because I'm really not a business person. I'm just following my passions. But I've learned that you've got to, at 64, I finally learned you've got to treat this like a business. Is
Yes.
that the one thing that they have in common is that they're hard workers, they're workaholics, they're visionaries, and they adapt well to change. And so for all these people that do not want to change, it's a struggle. And right now, we've all been struggling. And to me, the best way to get through all this is by reading books. And once you realize that, things like your outbreak of monstrous infection, this affects the world. It's not just here in the United States, though we've, in some ways, had the worst, I guess, record for how we've dealt with it. I have taken it very seriously, but I also take medicine and science very seriously. And I also worry about, all my friends that are older than me, and for all my grandson and that generation too. But I think what you're doing, are you working on another book, Afshan?
Yes.
What's
Yes, same kind, like science fiction and murder mystery. I somehow gathered that, this is the thing, because I just don't want to go till book. I want to go till TV series and movies. And this is a very hot topic: viruses, bacteria, and what happens then, and then FBI and CBI is involvement. So that makes a very good story, because
oh, excuse me. Go ahead.
after getting
Gonna sneeze. Go ahead.
after getting like review from Tailflix, because that is formed by one of the people who were, I think, in management in Netflix. So I got very nice. I'll send you the link and see if you can help me in that endeavor. So I think, more people can see my art. So I'm going to do another cozy murder mystery.
It's all about networking. In fact, my publisher, I'm the only person I know that got offered a job during COVID. I mean, she called me up and she said, we've started this publishing company in Atlanta and we're going to do it all different. 90% of the profits going to the talent, not to the publishing house. I'm listening because I've always said that we're mixed up here in America. It's the people writing the stories. It's the people that are working in the trenches. It's the teachers working in the schools that should have the highest incomes of all. We get things backwards sometimes. So I was very interested. And one of the things that Lucid House Publishing is doing is we've got the connection for films. Our first book that we came out with it right before COVID. And then we've held off on all the books until 2021 that we're coming out with because there's no point. I had a second book come out and it did not do well during COVID. There's just no way. If you can't get out there and talk about your book or go to book festivals and things, it's very difficult. So we've got a screenwriter and she's already finished the screen play for our first book, Spellbound Under the Spanish Moss, and we're now working with production in Atlanta because even though Hollywood has completely shut down, there are pockets of this world that are still doing. Even India is doing filming in where they really isolate and they take the temperatures and people are doing it smartly. But most films being done right now are all in animation. And that's because they can do it in a closed studio where nobody's exposed to the virus. So praying that the vaccine will be coming sooner rather than later. I think, I know it's already going out in Italy and England and different places. It hasn't been approved to go out yet here in the States, but I will tell you, as soon as that happens, then we can start seeing progression on how we go forward. But
so
if
do you want me to be a Hollywood agent?
I'll connect you to Echo Garrett because she's the one. I picked the books, with her, but she's the one that's taking it to that next level. So you'll love Echo. I just talked to her this morning about, we've got 10 books coming out this coming year and they're from all over the world. We're very excited about how global and diverse we are because I think it's really important that even though I've been picking books from other countries, and I think it's important now to really let people know that, because I had somebody say to me the other day, well, you act like you don't understand Black Lives Matter. And I go, what are you saying? I go, I have picked more African-American authors, more African-Jamaican authors. I just don't think people have seen my 20 years reading list, but I haven't been as vocal about it. So now I'm being very vocal about it, and we're going to be even more so global and diverse because as a community, as a world community, the only way we're going to get to a better place on this planet is if we all start working together. And, people laugh about, the beauty queens saying their one goal in life is world peace. But I said, if we really want to change everything about, everybody's treated in the world. That's what it's all about. We've got to learn how to get along with each other and quit jumping to conclusions and listening to people rather than saying, this is the way it is and that's the way I see it. And I grew up best friends with a young woman whose family was all attorneys. And I lived at her house, and her father was #1 in law school at KU Law School. Her mother was a journalist. And I absorbed their conversations like a sponge. I mean, they would argue. It was debate. It wasn't fighting. And they would, but they'd agree to disagree. And we have lost all civility in the world, and people just want to fight. And I go, no, this is not. And women know better than anybody that, hitting each other or striking or doing anything like that, it's not going to resolve anything. We need to sit down and have that hard conversation. Yes. And so I'm happy to have you here to talk about, if there was one thing that you wanted to share about your first book, one theme of thought, what would that be? besides the, your first word was, make do, and talking about, and I agree with that. I mean, I've always done everything. I don't come from an illustrious background. I come from a middle class America, but I've learned that, if I want something done, I just get another job. And what is the one thing you would want people to know, that the takeaway from reading this book?
They can have profit in their business if they just make a little tweak in their business models, what they are doing. And there is some Mughal mentality exercises at the back. So if they try that, it would be very good for their business.
That's great.
Because
And I still am kind of flabbergasted that you came up with this a year before this hit.
yes, yes.
It's really, and you think it's just your science background, your chemistry background and everything that put this into your mind? Because I
Yes.
think the biggest war of all that we have in the world is that we stay viable as a human race. And the only way we can stay viable is if we stay healthy and take care of the planet. I mean, if we,
Yeah, because I had always that thought that since so much terrorism is going on, there must be something, people are planning or doing something that just throw a virus in the air and see what happens. And just because all these countries are fighting with each other, because nobody fights now like with the battle, like with guns and all. This is the new way to fight. So that's what I had in mind. So I wanted to educate my readers that this can come up anytime.
it can, and it's I've seen it in a lot of films
Yeah.
recently with Outbreak and different ones. And I also, it's scary what you can't see, when
Yes.
you can't see it. But it's also common sense, I have never understood the mentality that, don't wear a mask anywhere you go, freedom. I'm thinking, i I have a big respect for the people that are older than me, and I'm a senior citizen now myself. I'm 64.
Oh,
And
like,
yeah, 64. It's just hard for me to believe sometimes too. I'm on Social Security, but I also have surrounded myself my entire life with young people, because going back to college, I'm with, 20-year-olds. And also, I've been a youth director and a Girl Scout leader and working with kids my whole life. I think being around young people keeps you young. But also, the way they treated me in school was with such respect and kindness. People go, "How did you get through?" And I go, I'd like to say it was my own, doggedness or whatever, but I have to say it was my fellow students lifting me up and helping me with the technology. Because when I first went to college, I wrote my paper on a manual typewriter. And all of a sudden I'm being told for my art history classes, I was going to have to do a PowerPoint. I didn't know what PowerPoint was, and luckily I had a student teach me at the library one day. And the library is my best friend in the world, because the University of Texas Library, I lived there. I cannot go on enough about the librarians that helped me research for papers and help me with technology, and I had a lot of help. But who has been now I loved when I read your book, that Abraham Lincoln quote.
yes.
Abraham Lincoln. And I thought, okay, I always think about myself looking to Mother Teresa, or, other world Gandhi or other people for quotes, but I never think of it as somebody from another country using an American as an inspiration. That was interesting. Why Abraham Lincoln?
Oh, because I always admired him. There was something very mysterious about him, that very, like, when you see his face or you see his movie or you read about him, there is something aura about him. Two presidents I find, one was Abraham Lincoln and the other one is President Trump. I feel, they are very charismatic, both of them.
they're as different as night and day. But there is when I was going to college, I listened to a lot of Audible books, and there's a 32 tape of the books on the story of Abraham Lincoln. And I had no idea that they tried to assassinate him way before he ever ran for president. They were constantly trying to assassinate him. I cannot remember who it's by, but I listened to those tapes because it took me an hour to get to school and an hour to get home. And I listened to those tapes, and I find him very inspiring too. And he had an interesting way of dealing with, and I react a lot of times to things that happen, but he did not. He sat back and said, let's just wait a minute. Let's sit back and think about this. And he would wait even to the point of where it was extremely uncomfortable on decision making. But by his waiting, it diffused a lot of anger. It diffused a lot of conflict.
Yes.
And I found that sometimes no answer is the best answer. And so I find him very inspiring too. And so, and so you say, I don't like to get into politics too much because people get so angry about it. But tell us why you find Trump inspiring. I would love to know.
Because back in India, we were so much, he was always on the Indian TV, like Indian TV was covering him, and we were always so much in awe. And then there was somebody who was building Taj Mahal, for us to see in India, because the casino's name was Trump Taj Mahal, So that was in the 90s. So that was very, very like something very charismatic in his personality. And believe me, when I voted for him, all my friends left me. So they have really tortured me, my friends, like, why did I vote for him? This is so ridiculous. And the way people are behaving, it's so ridiculous.
It really is, because no matter, I tell people, I don't discuss politics per se, but I tell people everybody has a right to believe whatever they want to believe. When I had my shop, I had a hair salon bookstore, and I would have political leaders in Texas call me, and no matter what politics they were, whether they were Republican or Democrat or independent, my doors were open, because I feel like as a person that does not censor books or reading, I should, if people want to use my place as a venue to explain themselves fully, I feel like, you should do that, because that's freedom of speech. And so I had everybody from Kinky Friedman, who was running for governor of Texas, to Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison, come and do events in my shop. And I welcomed them with open arms. It was always fascinating, because Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison was thinking about running for president, and she came with the Secret Service. And she said, where can I talk to you privately? And I go, well, I have a front door and a back door. This is it. There's no really place to go. And she was absolutely lovely. And while she was speaking to the crowd, I spent the time, she had adopted 2 children, I spent the time storytelling to her kids, because they were bored out of their mind. And I totally understood what that must be like, going around with their mom on her political forays. But it was fascinating for me to listen to them. I've gotten to meet a lot of world leaders. I got to meet our Secretary of State, Colin Powell. I got to meet our Vice President, Al Gore. I've got to hear Bill Clinton speak. I've gone to all the presidential libraries I can. I try to educate myself, but I do not want to be put in any political box. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. And I feel sorry that your friends, do not accept.
They all abandoned me. That just for voting, I was punished just for voting. This is so ridiculous.
No, I have friends from all religions. I have friends that are agnostic and don't even believe in God, and I'm a Christian, but I respect their beliefs, because when I look at the big picture of God in the world, that's what he would want us to do, is to love everybody, be kind, you know? And so that's the way I live my life. And that's my cousin who told me that he didn't believe in God is the nicest man I've ever known in my life. And I, you know, I'm convinced that someday he'll recognize, you know, but whatever people believe, that's their right.
Yes. Yes.
And then that's their belief. So do we have a title yet for your next book or?
No, not yet. I'm still in the research phase. So now I'm kind of coming to the first chapter. I self-published my book, but these two books I'm also looking to license it out. You know, if some big publisher wants to buy the rights for these two books, and of course the movie rights. You know, so yeah, because I could not even think what Netflix wrote in the script. I'll send you the script. They have just made it public. So
Oh, that's really
so,
cool. Well, good
yes,
for you. And I have the feeling you're going to figure it out because I know everything that happens for a reason. And it happens, you know, there's been many a times where I've, you know, when I got the DreamWorks deal, the contract was 64 pages long.
oh
And
my
I
God.
had an entertainment attorney, an entertainment agent, a literary agent, everybody working on this because I couldn't even understand the jargon. And
Yeah,
it took a lot to get it done. And when it was, I just thought it would be done, but no, they sold out to Universal Canada and they decided that instead of doing 20, 30 million dollar release movies, and the last one they did was set in India. It was the one about the restaurant, the oh gosh, with Helen Mirren, and I think it was a 20 or 30 million dollar film. It was a lovely film about an Indian man who goes and opens a restaurant in France. And it was a wonderful story, but they decided they'd only do $300 million movies, like, you know, like the Star Wars sagas
yeah,
and different things. But, you know, I feel like if it's meant to happen, it will.
yes,
And whatever we do in life is we, you know, we pay it forward. We listen to everybody. We take away knowledge and we gain a better understanding of other people's worlds. And you have a book club too. So tell us about your book club.
Oh, right now my book club is only reading President Trump's books because for the past 2 years, like since childhood, I was reading about him because he was so much on the TV. And now I thought, why not? I have got all the books which have come on him. So I said, why not do one after another, you know, like a series. So
Well,
my
I would think you would have a ton of people join that book club. I mean,
Yes, so I just put it like right now, I don't have members for that. I just do online meetings for that, and it is called Glam and Glitzy Book Club. So I just dress up and I just do my analysis of President Trump's book. And so it is like every Thursday, and you are more than welcome to come to
oh,
that.
and my book club is meeting, my online book club meets on Thursday. I think I have so many friends that are running book clubs on Thursday night. I think next year I'm going to turn it back to Tuesday nights because we always met in person the second Tuesday of every month. But we're meeting every week now. And of course, none of our book club meetings members are actually meeting now in person, though I do have chapters that when this opens up, will go back to meeting in person. But so that's why I'm trying to encourage them to, you know, go to all these authors that are doing these Zoom meetings and listen in. I learned so much.
Yes,
I had one of my authors was nominated for this TED Talk Women's Forum. I listened to 26 women give their TED Talks. It was the most fascinating, inspiring thing I've ever heard in my life. And now 3 of my authors have done TED Talks, and I'm going to share those during our conference, which is online, January 14th through 17th. You're a member. I hope you'll join us.
yes, I will come in that.
Yeah, you should come. And I will. What time does your book club meeting meet on Thursday nights?
It is from 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock Eastern time,
Yeah,
US
I've
Eastern.
got 3 people that are meeting right at that time. I'll
Yeah,
just have to take turns for a while and just check them all out. But you know, we can all learn from each other by reading, and sharing books. And I found that sometimes I would think I was so right about something, and I would find I'm so wrong too. I've learned that a lot in watching the Indian films, because I never could understand these weddings where the couples would not know each other. But
Yeah.
I actually understand it now.
Yeah.
I think the horoscope things, I'm finding it all fascinating, but I think it's choice. I think everybody should have the choice to do it however they want to do it. But I haven't had much luck in the love department when it comes to picking my own. So maybe I need to go to one of these horoscope people and read what they have to say. But I've learned a lot from the other culture, and the takeaway has been so great for me of the understanding. Yesterday, it's still out in the car. I did last night 3 Zooms with Stephanie Chance, one of my authors. She takes tours to Italy and Europe, and she's written books about taking Americans abroad, and she's gone everywhere. Turkey, Spain, Italy, Greece. I've been on her trips. They're fantastic. But she gave me a vintage from her store, because she has things from all over the world. I now have 2 of her pieces from India. They're vintage artwork pieces of the Hindi. The one is the woman that has all the arms.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was the
Not
one she gave me. And then I think the other one that she gave me is Lord the Vishnu.
okay.
Another one that she's given me. I bought a book on the religions because I'm trying to learn. I've always found world religions fascinating. So in the United States, do you practice Hindi or Hinduism, or
No, I'm a Muslim by
are
religion.
you Muslim? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And so do they have a mosque there that you can go to and everything?
Yeah, but I hardly go. I'm a progressive Muslim.
Well, my first husband was his father was Italian, his mother was from the Ukraine, but he was born in Tripoli,
Yeah.
and he was raised Muslim. But he went to schools abroad, so when we were married, he went to church with me, and that's another whole story. I could write a whole book about that. But we got married young, and the marriage did not last very long. And but he's happily married now, and I'm happy for him. And but it made me realize that I learned a lot about the Muslim culture. I learned a lot about the language. I never could speak it. I mean, it's like I've learned some Hindi, and Namaste. I've learned some of the words. I understand. I've watched so many of the movies. I understand when they're bobbing their head and saying nay, nay, nay. I understand a lot more. I haven't got the language down, but I understand the story without subtitles. I bet you I've watched over 100
There
films.
is one Netflix very good series, Bollywood Wives. It just
I
came.
just started watching that, and it
Yes.
was fascinating. And I noticed that in one of the photos of all the Kapoors, that Gauri Khan
Yes,
was.
Gauri Khan is like, she came in the last episode, and then she just announced that she would be coming in the next season. And
She's
Shah Rukh,
fascinating to me because I've heard him talk about his wife handles all the finances and produces the films, and she handles. And he said, because he goes, I just want to act, and that I can't even imagine what a chore that would be with all of their homes in all the different cities. I mean, they got a home in Dubai and one in Delhi, and I saw where she was giving a tour of their home, and they've opened an Airbnb, and I'm going, she's a phenomenal woman.
yes.
She works very much behind the scenes, but it's very impressive. And I think that's wonderful that you and your husband work so together, and they work so together. That is very
Very important, yes.
yeah, I have not had that in my life of
I'll send you a Shah Rukh, somebody who's in Bollywood, like the connections, they send me like a private song of Shah Rukh's. that
Oh,
video. I'm going to send you that
lucky
because
you. I
because
love the whole
you are
family.
Shahruk's fan, so I'm going to send you that. I
I
am
love
into Bollywood and Hollywood, but movie I want, this movie, this book to go into Hollywood because I want
well,
it
get
to.
it to his Red Chilies Entertainment. That's who you need to get it to. You never know.
I don't know. I don't know, but first I'm going to try Hollywood. That's what I'm going to do.
I honestly think you'd be better off going the other way because he's got 15 films he's going to be doing over here.
So, I
15.
yeah, I don't know.
Including one with a remake of Will Smith's. I follow all this. I follow India Today and different things. I get all the news messages and things, and it's very much interesting because I think India has created a new movie model that is Hollywood has just kind of, since they had the whole thing fall apart with the guy who was arrested and tried for all those years of sexual harassment. All the big studios it's totally changing. I that's my advice is I would be looking to them. I mean, you're one
No, as far as I feel like Indian businesses, because I was so much into India business, so I'm not very happy the way Indian businesses they run their companies. So I would rather try Hollywood, Netflix. Who knows, like
Netflix
Netflix.
is amazing. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
I
amazing.
live for Netflix and Amazon Prime and HBO.
Yes,
I
yes,
watch so many films because films are storytelling.
yes.
And I just watched the one with Hugh Grant. Oh, if you like mystery and suspense, watch the one with Hugh Grant and Nicole Kidman. It's a series called The Undoing. And
Okay.
I binge watched it and I was just like chills. It just still gives me chills. So, but there's a lot of things really change. Whoever knew that growing up going to the movies, I mean the movie theater, that's why I would love to go to a Bollywood movie theater to sit in this audience just to watch them watch a film. I mean, 25 years of watching one film by Shah Rukh Khan, people go every day. That blows my mind. I think, but I have go-to films that I watch, like The Wizard of Oz was my go-to film when I was growing up, because to this day, the magic of that, when it went from black and white to color, and Dorothy in Kansas, I mean, that's where I was raised, not that part of Kansas, but it's fascinating to me. So I wish you all the best. I think
Thank
it's
you.
going to be wonderful. And I'm working on my program now for Girlfriend Weekend, but we're going to have over 50 authors, and they're from all over the place. In fact, another fellow Indian author, Jay Shetty, his
Mhm.
publishing house sent me 250 copies of Think Like a Monk. I
Mhm.
love his podcast. And so everybody who signs up is going to get a hardback copy of that book. Uh,
Okay.
sent to you. So thank you for joining me today so much. It's so nice to get to know you better. And let's stay in touch. I will every Thursday night at 6 o'clock. I'll just go to your page and the links there or whatever. I'll check it out. And we meet at 7 o'clock. And you've come to mine, so I've got to
Yeah.
come. So we meet at 7 o'clock, and last night we met from 7 to, it ended up going into 9:30 because we did 3 videos. One was touring her home of European treasures. That was a 2-part video. And then I sat down with her and talked about her latest book. And gosh, we I got home at like 11:30. So thank you for coming on board and doing this. I'll be downloading it, putting it up on YouTube. You can share it with the world. And
Yes.
I've told all my authors that if you want to get featured on our show, um, send me again all those links and I'll send them out. And I know several of them have asked me and I gave them the information. So I hope they'll come to you. Sometimes it starts slow at first, but then when they see, I mean, just the fact that you've got millions of people watching your show, that
Yes.
that it just blows my mind. And I never knew where you came
It
from.
is in the cards, you have to download that list, or I can send you, it's on my webpage, the list where it is syndicated. I'll send you that list. You have to see how many cars and all it plays into. Because this W4WN has exploded, the markets.
I
So
did another iHeartRadio station in San Francisco not too long ago, and
it's on W4WN, Women for Women Network, and they are the ones who send it to iHeart and everywhere. They syndicate in everywhere in the world.
that's
So
great. So let's come on board, everybody. Join Afshan and join me, and let's get the world reading. And thank
yes.
you so much. I love the sparkles. You sparkle and shine. So thank you for joining me. Until next time, it takes a while to download, and then I'll get it to you. Okay?
Okay, thank you. And I'll send you all the information, what I
Okay.
was.
Bye, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
And I'm so happy and so humbled. And I have a feeling that maybe in 2022, my book will be one of in your book club, that big weekend. I have a feeling.
We could probably make that happen. Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.